Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
With the first trial behind her and her bargain with Rhysand established, Feyre is ready for the second of Amarantha's trials. But the terrors under the mountain do not sleep. How can Feyre reconcile her new means of survival under Tamlin's watchful gaze?
The views expressed by the hosts are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author. This podcast is a discussion shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel.
Though the hosts speak mostly within the constraints of this book, series spoilers may be discussed with or without warning. Explicit language, as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, and depression will recur throughout this podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk, a podcast where we deep dive into the writings of your favorite novels.
This season, we are exploring Sarah J. Maas's most controversial novel in the Court of Thorns and Roses series.
This is Jack.
And I'm Amy.
This week we're discussing chapters 38 through 41 in A Court of Thorns and Roses.
This week, we're asking what converts human Feyre to the Cauldron?
And how does Feyre's relationship with survival, and all that entails, impact her relationship with Tamlin? Also, we're going to look at themes of depression and coping with that depression.
All right, let's get started. Chapter 38. Feyre, despite conquering the worm, continues to be treated as prey. It is and should be fear-invoking. The Fae threaten Feyre at every turn, and they threaten her that if she doesn't do a good job with housework, they will tie her to a spit like a roast pig.
Tasty.
This is a line I'm going to use on my future children, by the way.
I'm going to spit you like a pig.
Yes. What's interesting here is that though she's able to hunt, she's made to feel like civilized tasks, such as cleaning, are impossible, and they make her feel small as a result. She specifically thinks to herself on page 338, I could take down a giant worm, but washing a floor, that was the impossible task.
She considers these tasks in these chapters to be impossible, which is a huge contrast to her having to complete the larger, more likely to be impossible tasks. And these tasks really mirror what she's already faced and will face. So the first task was with the worm, right? And Lucien was the one who helped her, said, look left, Feyre. And who's the one who helps her now when she's cleaning up the floor? Lucien's mom. And then in the second task that she has to do for chores is clean up lentils from a fireplace. And who's the one who helps her there? Rhysand. Who's the one who helps her during the second trial task? Rhysand.
I love that you pointed that out because I didn't really make that connection.
It was exciting when I saw it.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Really, this keeps with the theme that Feyre has protectors there and people who are willing to do something for her, none of which are Tamlin.
Funny how it's never Tamlin.
Can I just side note something?
Yeah.
I really love that Lucien's mom doesn't clean the place for her.
Oh, yeah.
She just gives her water to clean.
Because cleaning is still beneath her as a high fae.
Yeah, but she could have just moved her hands and boom, the dirt would have been gone. She gave her clean water. And it's for saving my son's life, you get to clean now.
good point. Despite the impossible tasks presented to Feyre, she tries to remind herself that she is capable. However, at every turn, someone's there to make her feel like she's wrong. I had keen eyes, she reminds herself. I could spot rabbits hiding in the underbush and track most things that wanted to remain unseen. Spotting lentils couldn't be that hard. I was wrong.
This is the first time that Feyre and Rhysand can really talk without Feyre's life hanging in the balance. And TikTok user thebookish_majesty points out that Feyre never visits Tamlin's bedroom and that this is symbolic to be the deepest parts of Tamlin, parts that he was never willing to show Feyre. So going off of that knowledge, while we're in this bedroom, and even though this isn't Rhysand's true bedroom, we can already learn a lot about the true version of him. He is tidy. He is trapped. He doesn't consider this place to be home. On page 339, no windows or exits to save the one I had just been chucked through. The bed was enormous and tightly made. There was nothing else in the room beyond basic furniture, not even discarded clothes or books or weapons, as if its occupants never slept here. Feyre is seeing a more metaphorical real side of Rhysand than she ever did with Tamlin.
I love this point because I think I never really thought about the fact that Feyre never goes to Tamlin's bedroom.
Oh, neither did I until I saw, this is why we're book talk for book talk, right? Like searching on TikTok, seeing what other people point out. And when I sent you that TikTok, I was so excited.
Oh, my mind was blown. Like Tamlin, Rhysand awakens Feyre's senses. I would also like to point out that apparently Sarah J. Maas only has two senses, or two sensations. Let me share some quotes. On page 340, darkness entered the room, guttering the candles with a snow-breezed kiss. Page 342, a lick of cold kissed down my spine. If you go back and look at everything about Tamlin.
Anything like breezes.
Oh, yeah. Anytime Feyre is sensing something when Tamlin's around, it's something kissed her. There's a breeze. The breeze announced his arrival. The breeze kissed her face.
In actuality, Feyre is farting every single time.
Tamlin walks into the room. Rhysand walks into the room. She gets so nervous, she farts.
We will need to make a compilation TikTok of this where we just search find every single time she says breeze or kiss. And we just say each line because you started reading them and she does use it a lot. If I was Sarah J. Maas's editor, I would point this out.
Oh, yeah. Girl, find something more creative to say.
We still love you, Sarah J. Maas, but it was just a funny call out.
But it was nonstop. Anyway, the point is, like Tamlin, things that should be scary and concerning are romanticized with breezes and kisses. So when Thorns cut Feyre's cheek, they kissed her cheek and blah, blah, blah. And caresses, lots of caresses too. On the theme of being romanticized, Rhysand is a list of paradoxes in Feyre's view, and something about that makes him more alluring. Let me just read this quote, and you tell me how hot he is. Page 343, horrific, stunning, the face of 1,000 nightmares and dreams. That again useless part of me stirred at the sight, the way the candlelight shone through the wings, illuminated the veins, the way it bounced off of his talons.
It's hot. It's hot. It's like talons, all right. You had me at horrific, to be honest.
His talons must be he must polish them or something if the light bounces off of them.
Do you notice at one point she talks about his talons where the toes are, and I really can't visualize it at all.
Oh, really? I totally missed that.
Below the knee, darkness stained his skin, but talons also gleamed in lieu of toes. It's not a great visualization.
No.
Why did you have to call out the toes? And I just imagine long toenails poking through his shoes.
Yeah. I kind of visualize Beauty and the Beast. He's just barefoot.
Wasn't barefoot. It just doesn't, okay.
It just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense, but I'm on board.
So despite her instincts and the disgusting talon toes, it's clear... It's clear Feyre is attracted to Rhysand. Just like when he came and searched her mind at Tamlin's Manor, everything about him is erotic. She describes his laugh as sliding along her bones and warming her blood, and his voice is an erotic caress. Again, a caress. I want to point out, remember that she wasn't into Tamlin in the beginning either, though she knew he was attractive, and we're seeing that again here too with Rhysand.
The physical attraction happened with Rhysand a lot faster than it did with Tamlin.
Yes, I would agree.
It could be said that all these small aspects is making Rhysand and Feyre. It's what's settling their dynamic a lot faster than it did with Tamlin. There's a lot more life and death happening. Feyre is asking questions that she never asked with Tamlin, and Rhysand's giving her information freely. Unlike her time with Tamlin early on when she wouldn't speak or look at him, Feyre admits that she can't keep her mouth shut with Rhysand. We're getting a lot more of open, without a care. I mean, she has a lot of cares, but more open Feyre.
There's a lot more of a natural dynamic to the two of them that isn't forced, where it was definitely more forced with Feyre and Tamlin. So as we proceed into the next chapters, we're coming back to this idea of events here mirroring past events. In chapter 39, we start off with Rhysand glamoring and controlling the guards so that a starving Feyre is safe and receives hot meals. It's just like her early time in the Spring Court, where she resents the food, she resents the person providing the food, but she knows it's important to her survival that she consumes it.
Rhysand's also giving Feyre power, both in the literal sense and in the need to eat to survive, but also with the symbolic nature of what comes with food. As Amy's pointed out, food equals power. Then we also have the symbolism of eyes that are highlighted in this chapter. And eyes traditionally are very symbolic in literature, in movies, really everywhere. They're the whole windows to the soul and all that good stuff. So Tamlin's eyes are only ever seen behind a mask, right? So that's a physical representation of the true sense that we never really get to see the real Tamlin behind the mask, behind his eyes. Feyre's eyes once held the identity of her sister and her mother, and then eventually became her own. Now we have Rhysand, who left an eye in the palm of Feyre's hand, and that keeps her company in a way. She kind of talks to it a little bit, and it also provides a distraction and a connection with Rhysand.
I wonder if the fact that Rhysand's eyes are violet is really important because it's such an unnatural color for a human. Mm-hmm. It's definitely something Feyre notices every time she looks at him.
Oh, yeah. If we imagine eyes being the windows to the soul, his soul is different. She matches it. She sees it.
Yeah. So another mirroring of events here in chapter 39. Just like Tamlin, Rhysand dresses Feyre to his liking and against her will. Also like Tamlin, he tells her, "You look just as I hoped you would." I wonder if that's actually romantic if someone told you that.
Oh, I'd be pissed. If my boyfriend said that to me, "You look just as I hoped you would," be like, "I'm sorry, how did you hope I would look?"
Yeah,
like
that's
a
fair.
damn dream every single time you see me.
Also mirroring past events, Rhysand has Feyre painted so that both he and she know where she has been touched. And this is just like Tamlin being painted during Calanmai. What's interesting here is that Amarantha wears rich and modest clothing, the colors of flowers, specifically lavender and orchid purple. This is the opposite of Feyre, who is very scantily clad and indicates a perceived caste of Night Court versus other Fae.
I love this so much. A good call out. Good call out. So then the question is she dressed to his liking or to support her, or he's liking to support her? The dress is meant to be an exact opposite contrast to Amarantha, who is described as her clothes being more modest. Feyre is now the sexual being that Amarantha wants to be. Tamlin wants Feyre, Rhysand wants Feyre, everyone wants to sleep with Feyre except no one wants to sleep with Amarantha.
I was going to say, does Amarantha want to sleep
except
with
Amarantha.
her?
No, everyone wants Feyre, no one wants Amarantha.
As I was reading ahead to some of the chapters we're going to cover in the next episode, for the first time Amarantha's figure is described when Amarantha walks in on Rhysand and Feyre kissing. The words are, "Amarantha's curved figure filled its space," as in the doorway. And you made a really interesting point that was maybe an attempt to make Amarantha more sexual, or Amarantha is trying to be more like Feyre.
It's a really good call out because Amarantha has been pointed out to be not all that pretty and apparently really modest clothing. And I can't quite imagine what she looks like in Feyre's eyes. So it is a very big contrast to how we've seen Amarantha. Is she trying to mimic Feyre? I don't know. That's how I would interpret that, is that after all these like sexy gauzy clothing that now she's trying to mimic Feyre.
That's also the antithesis of what we imagine Fae to be, especially a powerful Fae female.
Oh, really hypersexual?
Yeah. And Amarantha is not that. And I wonder to what extent does her status as the strongest general of Hybern have to do with that?
Of not being a sexual being. I mean, it's also the fact that like no one wants to sleep with her. There's tons of high lords that people are willing to sleep with, but there's something about her. Also, you know what? I'm going to fight for Amarantha for a second. Let me put on my literary feminist theory lens. How messed up is it that you have the one female in power who is now described as a non-sexual being.
But also, I'm going to speak for myself who wears modest clothing, and good for you, Amarantha, for being modest and being in power.
Okay, BS that it's modest. It's like you wear tight pants. Is it covering your ass? Yes. But do we get to see it? Yes.
I just think a woman shouldn't be put down for what she's wearing.
She should definitely, I mean, yeah, it sucks of Feyre to be like pointing that out, you know. Yeah. Feyre, look, you can call her a bitch, but, you know, do we need to tear down other women and how they look? No. Feyre being perceived as the sexual being while Amarantha is not, I think is going to be a dynamic that we're going to see through the rest of this book. This is in stark contrast to how Feyre looks from the neck up, as she says. She calls herself regal, and Rhysand even gives her a crown. With what little power and control that Rhysand's able to give Feyre, he's setting her up to be on an even playing field with Amarantha. On page 349, I lifted my chin, the weight of the crown digging into my skull. I'd beaten her first task. I'd beaten her menial chores. I could keep my head high. I'm going to go into it later in like the rest of the chapter we talk about it, but I'm going to do a little spoiler. We talk about how Feyre really beats herself up for what she considers cheating, the second task. You can say she cheated these menial tasks too.
Why doesn't that bother her?
I know, right? Sorry, I was just like, I beat her chores. Did you, Feyre?
You picked all those lentils out of the fireplace.
You really scrubbed that whole floor with dirty water. Okay. Then Feyre has the realization that the bargain that she made with Rhys isn't just to torture her or torture Tamlin, but it's Rhysand having faith that she's going to survive the whole thing.
So despite Rhysand's faith in her, she also knows that Rhysand is treating her like a belonging. Feyre considers herself to be a possession of Tamlin's, but is disgusted by this thought of Rhysand owning her. The difference here is that Rhysand at least is honest about treating her like a belonging, where Tamlin made her think that she had agency but was really a possession the whole time.
And it's funny because Feyre has more agency with Rhysand, even though she doesn't realize it, than she did with Tamlin.
It's so warped, but also mirroring. Mirroring past events, always.
Mirror.
Another thing that Rhysand does that Tamlin has also done, on page 349, Rhysand goes to touch Feyre in a semi-romantic way. It reads in particular, I flinched as he brushed a stray lock of my hair from my face. He ran his fingers down my cheek, a gentle caress. I was like, wait, hasn't Tamlin done this before? Wasn't his first romantic touch also her cheek? And I went back, and on page 135, after fighting the Naga, Tamlin also caresses her cheek with his fingers.
It's such a great freaking callback that with the Naga, Feyre admits that's when things shifted with Tamlin. And what's the big signifier there? Caressing of the cheek. So things are shifting there. The way that she talks about Rhysand and even his treatment of her is starting to change.
Even though we are starting to see this shift, when he's gentle with her, she's still afraid. At least that's what my note says. When I read it again, I was like, is she afraid?
I think she's afraid, but she's afraid that if she accepts Rhysand and the fact that he's different than what she's thought of him in her own mind, then all these positions, all these roles that she's assigned everyone will start to crumble, including Tamlin.
That's a good point. And we're going to see Tamlin crumble a lot.
Oh, he's going to crumble. Meanwhile, she also mentions Tamlin's temper. On page 349, he was able to keep signs of his temper at bay. She views Rhysand with this fear while he's being gentle with her, but then she also views Tamlin in the sense of comfort, but he's the one who has the temper on him.
It's such a weird shift. And I think we can point back to the bond or the bargain being established as this turning point. Because now that the bond is in place, Feyre's instincts treat Rhys as an equal and Tamlin more as an abuser. On page 347, the instincts that had once told me to be quiet around Tam and Lucien utterly failed me when Rhysand was near. It's very similar to how Feyre and Tamlin appeared more comfortable with each other after the bond was forged between them when they killed the Naga, and after the Suriel told Feyre to stay with the High Lord. So we're going to make a hard left here and go into the topic of consent. Rhys forces Feyre to drink the wine under the mountain with his powers, and she is ultimately not in control. She's even forced to dance in a way that she never would. This is a darker mirror or version of the summer solstice with Tamlin and the fairy wine, though control and consent were also questionable there, as we previously discussed. In reaction to this, she suffers both physically and mentally from the repeated drinking and dancing at court, and the human version of her cannot survive it.
And later on in the book, we do find out that Rhysand did this all for her own safety, to not have to remember what's going on under the mountain. But this was done without her consent, and it caused a lot of distress in this moment. Don't get me wrong. We love Rhysand. This is a very pro-Rhysand podcast, but it's also fucked up.
It's so fucked up. And it's just kind of carrying on the theme that the Fae know better. Like, of course, Rhysand knows better than Feyre because he's Fae and she's not.
And we see that in the next book.
Yeah, we do. And it's really messed up.
Feyre experiences her consent being taken away with the Fae a lot more often than we saw when she was with the humans. And like, honestly, in the early book, I don't remember any scene where something happened without her consent. Even though with the Fae, she's built her own confidence, she's found her own identity, she's also experienced quite a bit of hardship, and there's that struggle with consent there.
I think that makes the stakes of everything that happens so much higher in a way, because so much is out of her control. As we encounter Lucien again, Feyre asks about Tamlin. She assumes that Tamlin has also lost control, but we find out from Lucien that Tamlin is self-inflicting his silence. He is self-interested, and Lucien romanticizes Tamlin's self-interest as a desire to protect Feyre. If you really read into it, Tamlin's only protecting himself. Lucien says, "Hasn't it occurred to you that Tamlin is keeping quiet to avoid telling Amarantha which form of your torment affects him most?"
I hadn't even thought of it that way, where it's like, yes, it is his own self-interest. Because it is. Like, he wants to protect Feyre. I'm not going to pretend like he doesn't care about Feyre or even love her in the best way he can love her. But it really is a self-centered form of protection. In the same conversation, she asks Lucien if Tamlin is okay. How is he doing underneath that spell? And we don't really get her mentioning a spell that much before. Like, for the most part, she understands Tamlin can't do anything, that he's in a tight spot. But all of a sudden we just get is he in a spell?
She hasn't really thought about this except for when she first comes under the mountain on page 300. She thinks that maybe Tamlin's memories have been removed or something, but
she never mentions it again.
Never mentions it again. So again, Sarah J. Maas, if I was your editor, I would say bring it up at least one more time in between the two occurrences.
It would have been a great struggle of Feyre fighting with, is he under a spell or is he doing this for my own safety? I think that would have been a powerful back and forth in Feyre's mind.
I wonder, though, if she had gone that direction, if the decay of their relationship could have happened as quickly. Or could it have been more quick?
Yeah, the decay of their relationship could have gone faster, especially since on page 355, Feyre still says, he, Tamlin, never treated me like a captive or a slave. And that's what she's saying to Rhysand. And while, sure, Tamlin never treated Feyre like a slave, he definitely treated her like a captive. He kept her captive. He said, sure, you can leave, but if you leave, you're going to die. Again, she's rewriting history. She has to justify her actions in her mind as to why she's doing everything. She's there going through the worst experience of her life, and it won't mean anything if she doesn't love Tamlin. So she really has to love Tamlin.
But despite her trying to convince herself that she loves Tamlin, he is seen for what he is on page 356, which is a beast without claws.
And that whole line reads, Tamlin remained utterly impassive, a beast without claws. The language that she's using to describe Tamlin, it's been changing, and that's been building up over time. But this is a very direct line of her just straight up saying that he is utterly impassive.
You know, at this point, all Feyre needs from Tamlin is to know that her sacrifice and her suffering and her humiliation, quite frankly, is worth it. But he ignores her, and I think that also influences how she views him. At least in this situation, Rhysand is very upfront about what he's doing and why, whereas Tamlin is just impassive and doing nothing.
I can definitely imagine him wallowing in his own self-pity. You know, it's all about Tamlin for Tamlin. So, of course, it's like, I'm going through such a hard time. He could have winked at her or something.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he had met with Lucien. We already know Lucien is going to Feyre. While he was whipping Lucien, he could have, leaned over, tell Feyre I love her, and then whip him.
And then whip him. Sounds like some major kink. Speaking of whipping, towards the end of this chapter, Feyre sees for the first time Amarantha using Rhysand to torture another Fae. This is also the first time that Feyre sees a fairy self-defecate. It shows this intense fear about Rhysand and his powers and how he's superior compared to other high Fae. Even Feyre's bowels are watery too at the sight.
It's a great call out because, like you said, this is the first time that Feyre has seen this. And does it show just how weak this specific Fae is, or are we showing that Feyre has always been at a more even playing field, and maybe she's just now realizing, oh, they're not all this super powerful, high and mighty Fae?
I love that you bring that point up because I hadn't even really thought about it. For me, it's always about how is Feyre being put down, but I think that's a great point that she's actually, in this moment, being raised to their level, and just like me, cannot see that. When Rhysand kills the fairy to put him out of his misery, instead of allowing Amarantha to torture the poor Fae, Feyre willingly drinks the wine that Rhysand gives her, and he drinks with her. And they drink mostly to forget. It specifically reads, "But when we reached the food and wine at the back of the room, he handed me a goblet and downed one alongside me. He didn't say anything before the wine swept me into oblivion." I really love this moment that they have this camaraderie. I mean, it's not a great moment, but they have this...
It's a sense of camaraderie. It's kind of like, well, this both sucks. Like, this sucks for both of us.
This sucks. Let's forget. And it made me stop to think, like, did Tamlin ever drink wine? Actual fairy wine with Feyre, and I don't think he ever did.
No, there wasn't that moment of, that, like, when you have like that glass of wine and you're after a long, rough day, and it's just that like sigh of like, not relief, but just that, this is hard. You're right. She never had that with Tamlin.
Yeah, not even at summer solstice. We never see Tamlin drink wine. So for all we know, he was fully sober and she was
Tamlin
not.
is like sober, and then letting Feyre get wasted.
Creepy.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
As we move into chapter 40, Feyre's experiences under the mountain are pulling her away from Tamlin, and he is becoming less of an anchor for Feyre. It's so interesting that we read on page 360 that not even gazing at Tamlin could calm me, because when she first came under the mountain, I so happened to stumble across a line where she says Tamlin's eyes were a balm. I just love this because him watching her when she first came under the mountain was a balm to her. So like it soothed her, it calmed her. But now her looking at him can't calm her. And it's just so powerful that she's not tethered to him anymore.
No, he's not the source of comfort. He's not the source of power. I love that. When you found that, it was a very exciting squeal highlighting moment because it really shows how far we've come under the mountain. When you think about the entire book and what happens under the mountain is just really towards the end, you know, like there's not like as many chapters as there are for the rest of the book, but so much happens, so much development and so much breaking down that this is a great example of just how far we've come.
You know what, Feyre? I love Feyre's response to this because it's every girl's response. It's like, okay, just match his energy, girl.
Yeah.
So she thinks she can be indifferent to save them, just like how Tamlin's being indifferent to her, but she's not capable of that, as we read on page 361. If Tamlin was playing indifferent to keep us both safe, so would I. But I dared a glance at my High Lord and found his eyes hard upon me. If I could just hold him, feel his skin for just a moment, smell him, hear him say my name. Like, okay, girl, keep it together.
I know, she just went from like, if he can play indifferent, so can I. I just want to smell him, be with him, breathe him. I just want to be, but I'm going to be indifferent. Oh my God, I just want to smell him. There's something to be said that at the start of this particular trial, she's trying to mimic Tamlin's actions, and by the end of it, she's listening to Rhysand on how to act. This is a transformative moment from complacent to challenging. Not that Feyre hasn't been challenging before, but she walked into this particular trial with a much more calm energy, and even though she's about to lose it at the end, she's able to hold it together because of Rhysand. And like I said, not that many chapters, but a whole lot of changes happening in a short amount of time.
Yeah, I love that you point that out because this chapter's book ended really well. Trying to be like Tamlin and then instead listening to what Rhysand tells her to do. This idea that she's gone from complacent to challenging, I think you can also say that she's challenging her own thoughts and understanding of her relationships with the men around her. I think this really signifies to us as readers that Rhysand has now taken Tamlin's role as protector and helper, whether Feyre likes it or not. She even goes as far to say, I could only trust him. I could only give myself up again, forced to concede my helplessness. I listened to him. Let him keep me tethered to sanity as I was escorted back to my cell by the guards. Rhysand's words echoed through my mind, holding me together.
No.
It's so sad. It gives me goosebumps.
He like talks to her the entire time until she's in her cell.
Yeah.
That's really sweet.
It is really sweet. Now, this is where we encounter Feyre after the second trial, at what I think is her truly lowest point. She cries for the trivial part of herself, once so full of color and light, now hollow and dark and empty. What's funny, though, is that when Rhysand comes to distract her, only those star-flecked violet eyes were bright, full of color and light. He brings the color and light to her world, even when she thinks she's no longer capable of seeing them.
And in this scene, he licks away her tears, tasting her pain, taking her pain into him. In that moment, she feels lust for someone other than Tamlin. On 368, she says, my body went taut and loose all at once, and I burned, even as chills shuddered along my limbs. And Rhysand points it out, beneath all your pride and stubbornness, I could have sworn I detected something that felt differently. Interesting. She was horny and he felt it. Love it.
I just had something come to mind. So he licks her tears, right? And now something is different. Tamlin kissed Feyre's eyes to remove the glamour, and she saw him differently.
Oh. You know, when the shivers and the lust stopped happening, and when she, or not stopped, but she backed away, is when Rhysand went to go lick her eyelashes.
Weird.
The concept of tears and feasting on someone's tears is normally a power move, right? Like, I'm going to feast on your tears. It's like, I'm going to dominate you. But it is a very intimate moment here.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Never wanted anyone to lick my tears before.
But now you do.
I'm willing to consider it.
Mike, where are you?
Babe. Come here. I got some tears for you to lick.
So let's jump back for a moment, back to the second trial. Feyre recognizes that her illiteracy makes her inferior. It mocks her the way that the fairies have always mocked her. By the way, remember all the times that illiteracy came up and was pointed out to us? Our breadcrumbs finally became a loaf of bread.
A sourdough loaf of bread, because it's been rising and curating and just finally come to this moment.
The irony is that her illiteracy is actually not intentionally being used against her. Yeah, it's mocking her, but as Feyre says on page 363, fate, a cruel, vicious twist of fate. Amarantha would have used this information against Feyre if she had known that Feyre was illiterate, but she doesn't. It's just a coincidence, or fate. Fate had a hand in it. I love that Feyre thinks fate had a hand in it, because once Rhysand realizes that Feyre is unable to read, he admits that it's more than petty gossip and that it is knowledge to be used against her. And how will he use it against her? He's going to punish her later on by making her learn how to read, which honestly is what Tamlin should have done in the first place.
She doesn't think of Tamlin in this moment when she's like at the end of the second trial, and she doesn't realize that he could have spent the entire time she was at the spring court teaching her how to read. But it's safe to say that she internalizes this to some degree, because she begins to alter her image of him even more so. And I know we keep talking about altering her image of him and the language that she uses, but I want to bring to our attention here that altering her image of him isn't just like, oh, he was a clawless beast. It's her describing her love for him even more so. This is so much more inflamed and over the top than when she went under the mountain originally. Every time something points out that Tamlin might have had a flaw or had a shortcoming or didn't help the situation, it changes the way she views him to be more obsessed with him, more in love with him.
It's like when you know you're wrong, so you have to just prove more and more that you're right.
You've got to double down.
Yeah, you do. You're committed, man.
It's like, oh, this is a huge mistake. Let me make it bigger.
I made this choice. I made this bet. I will lie in it. I want to go back to this idea of fate. If you recall, before going under the mountain, Feyre very explicitly says to Alice that she does not believe in fate or the cauldron. But now we find ourselves at the end of chapter 40 and on page 364 saying, I could gladly, willingly, fanatically believe in a cauldron and fate if they would take care of me. That's a really powerful statement for a human. Why is Feyre at this point? What has brought about this conversion in her?
I love this point. And originally when we were coming up with our chapter and episode structure, you made a great call out of wanting to start episode 9 or episode 8 from her going into the mountain to her realizing, oh, I believe in the cauldron. Even though it was probably best that we split it up, we need to call out how she went into the mountain, like you said, of her not laughing at the idea of fate, but just really being dismissive of it. And now it's just like, I can be a believer. Help me.
And a spoiler for something I'll say in a few minutes, but she's gone through a conversion and really a baptism here. Like, this is a true religious conversion for her. And it's really fascinating, and I think it's an important process for her to have undergone before she loses her humanity.
As I mentioned a little bit earlier, Feyre's taking this whole cheating thing to heart here. On page 367, I wouldn't stop. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't beat her. She won today, and she hadn't known it. She'd won. It was only by cheating that I'd survive. It really speaks to her moral character that she takes it so close to heart that she cheated, even though she didn't care with those like chores. But I just wanted to point out here that I would cheat willingly, would have been totally happy.
I would not feel guilty about it.
Nope.
No, you're right, though. It really does inform her character now, but also in the future. I think it really actually also speaks strongly to her insecurity about her illiteracy as well.
Yeah, I mean, if that makes sense. Like, it's not really about cheating. It's the fact that she didn't get to beat the task.
Right, with her own skills.
With her own skills. Skills that she knows that she doesn't have or isn't aware. Versus the other times, it's not like she had skills to magically clean water or skills to magically find all those lentils. This is a very added, like one that she knows that she could have had these skills.
Right, that she was incapable of surviving because she doesn't feel guilty that Lucian warned her about the worm.
She's doing all the heavy lifting there.
Right, exactly. And so what follows this in chapter 41 is this ultimate despair. You know, if Feyre wasn't already depressed, she is now.
Oh, yeah.
On page 370, what followed the second trial was a series of days that I don't care to recall. A permanent darkness settled over me, and I began to look forward to the moment when Rhysand gave me that goblet of fairy wine and I could lose myself for a few hours. I stopped contemplating Amarantha's riddle. It was impossible, especially for an illiterate, ignorant human. So this is really Feyre's breaking point. Her hunting skills cannot make up for her literacy, and her talent for art cannot make up for her literacy. And she knows deep down that she almost lost her life because of it. What does she do in response? She uses wine as a means of escape and coping. Does that make it consensual? I don't know. It's certainly unhealthy because she's knowingly and willingly relinquishing her control. On page 371, I greedily drank the wine, and I stopped caring about who I was and what had once mattered to me. And I really, really understand that. I've been there, and it's a very, very dark place.
Yeah, we've all been there. It's at least fairy wine would probably taste better than the cheap stuff I drank my sorrows in my 20s.
Hopefully she's not gaining a lot of weight like I did with all the beer I drank in college.
Yeah.
But it's not really a laughing matter. And her
I'm sorry for laughing.
No, it's okay. I laughed too.
I laugh. This isn't a laughing matter, Jack. I'm sorry.
On top of all of this, her humanity makes her feel very small and unimportant and fragile. On page 370, the future I dreamed of was just that, a dream. Decades. That's what I was fighting for. A flash in time for them, a drop in the pool of their eons. Even thinking of Tamlin in these moments makes her feel worse.
The truth is hitting her really hard right now for what she's actually fighting for, both for Tamlin and her time with him. Like, she's fighting for, like she said, like decades, if that. Like, at what point is she going to start feeling like, oh no, am I older than you now? Are you not going to be as attracted? Like, I mean, I don't want to say if you're lucky, but if she's like okay with being with him, at 80, like, get it, girl. But, she may not be comfortable with that. Ultimately, she is doing this for her sisters as well. She goes into the mountain thinking about wanting to keep her sisters safe, but we haven't gotten much of the sister talk here because she's too focused on Tamlin.
Because she has to prove that her choices are the correct choices and that she's doing the right thing for this guy who's not even giving her the time of day.
It's like she really could have done this entire thing for her sisters in a reasonable sense, right? Like, I need to keep the human world and my sister safe. But instead of focusing on like a reasonable thing, she focused on Tamlin, the hot guy. I get it.
In her depressive state, Feyre is trying to cut off her senses because that's what makes her her. But despite that, she smells the wraiths that take her to Rhysand, and it signals to us that her senses are still open despite her best efforts to close them. So when Rhysand sends her music, it really reignites something in her, and it gives her hope and brings her back to herself. It's interesting here that Rhysand is using music because this is definitely mirroring the summer solstice when Tamlin plays the fiddle for Feyre, and it happens to be the happiest night of her life, or day of her life. This is obviously not the happiest day of Feyre's life, maybe the saddest day of her life, or most bleak day of her life. Her thought on page 374 reads, "This wasn't music to dance to. It was music to worship, music to fill in the gaps of my soul, to bring me to a place where there was no pain."
In this darkness, in this really depressive state, she's getting this vision, this music from Rhysand, which I don't even think she knows it's from Rhysand. I kind of think that she probably believes she's like on some kind of trip. And this whole vision is from Rhysand's point of view. We're seeing a city, Valaris, right? That's the city that they save. We get music. That's the music from Valaris. He's flying in the clouds. He's going to the sky. And then I'm going to read this quote on page 375. "Up and up, building to a palace in the sky, a hall of alabaster and moonstone, where all that was lovely and kind and fantastic swelled in one place. I wept to be so close to that place, wept from the need to be there. Everything I wanted was there. The one I loved was there." And then record scratch. "The music was Tamlin's fingers strumming my body." This was what I was fighting for. And it's like, I don't really think this is what Rhysand was trying to tell you, Feyre. You and I were talking about this, Amy, off mic. This is Rhysand, I think, the moment he's falling for Feyre. Because it's clearly his point of view. He's going to that sky palace that he has. And he's flying up hoping to see the one he loves, aka Feyre, in there. I think he's started as a gift to Feyre, and then it turned into a daydream for him.
I would agree. When you first read this novel, you don't really know what's happening. And so it's all in hindsight, right? And what we understand from future books. But he's taking her to this place that no one outside the Night Court has ever seen or even knows of. And so it is truly a gift that he's giving her and something very vulnerable that he's sharing with her. Obviously, his thoughts of the one I love is there is her being like, oh, well, the only person I love is Tamlin. So Tamlin must be the one that's like here now. Yeah. It's just like fill in the blank here. And so, Tamlin is where Feyre's mind goes.
I hope Sarah J. Maas releases like a Rhysand's point of view of Under the Mountain. Because I want to see this moment where he's like laying in bed having a moment. And then he's just like, what the fuck? I wasn't thinking Tamlin.
I don't want Tamlin's fingers on my body.
Yeah. And the music doesn't stop. Like the music just plays harder in that scene. Like a crescendo, she says. Like it just like goes even louder and harder. Like he's like trying to like get it out of her head. Like, nah, Tamlin.
I cannot wait to see this adapted for the TV.
I hope so.
So this chapter ends with Feyre saying, just 2 more days, and then I would learn what the eddies of the Cauldron had planned for me. As I was saying earlier, this is so powerful to me that for someone like Feyre to say, I don't believe in fate or the Cauldron, and then if there's such a thing as fate, it might take care of me, and now to say, I'll be interested to see what the Cauldron has in store for me is huge. I think at the end when she dies, spoiler alert, her death is her baptism. And she emerges from under the mountain as High Fae. And this is just one big conversion story that prepares her for what comes next, her next life.
You and I both talked about when we first read this book. When did it get interesting for us? Because the first part's like kind of like a fun, pleasant, okay, this is a sweet story. You and I both had the same feeling, and I think everyone had the same feeling that once she goes under the mountain, it's like a different book. It's what really brings people in, and they're just like, oh, this is interesting. And like I said, it's a small percentage, or not small, but it's not as large of a percentage as the rest of the book, non-under the mountain time, because so much is happening. She's gone from a non-believer to a believer to eventual baptism, and the character growth and development, it's just a lot of moving parts, but you know what? It's being done at a fantastic pace and in a way that I'm believing.
I totally agree. For only 25% of the book, and mind you, the last 25% of the book, it's really powerful.
It really is. Good job, Sarah J. Maas.
Despite our editing notes, you did a good job.
You did it, kid. You're going to be huge.
So we end this episode with a few breadcrumbs, just a sprinkling. Once again, we have Feyre's death referenced multiple times. Some of my favorites include on page 349, Rhysand's offhand comment that foreshadows that Feyre will become immortal. For the rest of my life, he said it as if it were going to be a long, long time.
Yeah.
And page 370, I knew that the third trial would be the one to kill me. I wasn't going to leave here alive, which is true.
We also have breadcrumbs for future books on page 350. Feyre views herself debased because of the tattoo and paint, which is funny because later on, she's going to tattoo herself and make more bargains as she falls in love. Then on page 55, she claims Tamlin never treated her like a captive, but trust me, he's gonna go treat you real soon.
That's a self-fulfilling prophecy right there.
So let's go back to the questions that we asked ourselves, Amy. You had the first one.
What converts human Feyre to the Cauldron? I think
that's a great question.
It's actually a really difficult question. I know we just talked about how this is a conversion story. For me, it's really about Feyre realizing for the first time in her life that no amount of her skills or protection from others can really, truly ensure her safety. And that fate has an interesting way of taking the wheel.
When you ask yourselves, like, why does anyone convert, or why does anyone turn to God or Cauldron, turn to a higher being, let's say, it's because you've been broken down, right? And she's been so broken down that she's willing to rebuild herself anew.
Yes, I totally agree. And it's this idea, not of Tamlin, but of the Cauldron that gives her the strength to carry on.
Which is great because the Cauldron ends up becoming an enemy.
So much irony.
The second question we asked ourselves was, how does Feyre's relationship with survival and all that entails impact her relationship with Tamlin? Feyre always had a great survival instinct. She's had to do what she needs to do to survive. And Lucien tries to make her feel guilty at one point in here. We don't really talk about it, but he does come to her saying like, couldn't you have waited? And she's like, bro, you don't know when I'm going to die. Like, you were never really there for me. All of this is impacting Tamlin, but it's like now she has to feel guilt because she's trying to survive. And she shouldn't have to feel guilty. She's having to do a whole lot to save your ass, Tamlin. The last thing she should be feeling is guilty.
I wrote down the question as being, how does Feyre's relationship with survival impact her relationship with Rhysand?
Ooh, we both miswrote the question.
Yeah, we did. But I think your point is a good one, that she has to survive and she can't feel guilty about it and can't worry about who it's going to piss off. Meanwhile, she also has to survive, and here's this new person who's providing for her in a way that Tamlin has not previously. And I think that that does require her to, despite her initial impression of Rhysand, build camaraderie with him and open herself up to him in a way that she would never have been willing before.
And he's providing for her both emotionally and physically. When Feyre first came to the Spring Court, Tamlin provided for her physically.
Not emotionally.
He could have told her early on, your family's being taken care of. He knew that was tearing her apart. Instead, he withheld that information. You know, Rhysand's coming in, helping her not fall apart, helping her survive. And yeah, like survival is bringing them closer together and is tearing her apart from Tamlin.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. Next week, we will be exploring chapters 42 through 46 of A Court of Thorns and Roses.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our form at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a weekly mini episode.
If you are enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon, Ko-Fi, or Venmo.
Or find us on TikTok and Instagram at the handle booktalkforbooktalk. Bye!
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.